Hello，大家好啊！Hello，大家好！Hello，大家好！大家好！Welcome to Let's Canto Talk。Hello，大家好！Let's welcome to Let's Canto Talk。大家
老
好，
師好，
你好，你好。So, let me first introduce myself, and my name is Janet. Hello, and I'm one of the Cantonese-speaking librarians at the Oakland Public Library Asians branch. 你好，大家好，大家好。I also have my colleague Wendy here, and then she is going to be helping us with the program tonight, and she will be monitoring the chat for questions. So if you have any questions during the lesson, please type it in the chat, and then Wendy will be monitoring it to help you. We will also have a Q&A sessions towards the end of this 60 minutes Cantonese learning program. And before we start the program today, I need to give a very special shout out to the friends of the Rockridge Library for sponsoring this Cantonese learning series. This summer, we will have 6 classes, and this is class number 1. So let's go over briefly what today's lesson will be. We will talk a little bit about the background and history of Cantonese, and what are tones, and what are romanizations in Cantonese. We will also learn some useful phrases, and our teacher will also share some of her tips on learning Cantonese with us. And the last 10 to about maybe 15 minutes of our program, we'll have a Q&A session, and we hope you will enjoy the class and that you will have a lot of fun learning Cantonese with us. And now I'm going to introduce everyone to our teacher, Sue Marguerite. Hi, Sue.
Hello，大家好。
So Sue, she lived in Hong Kong for about 30 years, and now she spends her time between the US and Hong Kong. She has learned Cantonese through local courses in Hong Kong, and also through bits and pieces over her time spent there with her friends and also her family. Sue is a children's book author, and she is a Chinese English translator. She's a voiceover talent, and to me, she's a mahjong master. She currently lives in the East Coast, and she's offering Cantonese and Cantonese classes and traditional Chinese character classes through her website, CantoLingo. She also runs a YouTube channel, which is called Cantonese Corner, which she shares her experience on learning Cantonese. And she also have a lot of Cantonese learning content prepared by her as well. So let's all welcome Sue. Yay!
That's it. Thank you so much, Janet. I am so happy to be here with you guys. I think this is just such a phenomenal, wonderful opportunity to share with you what I know about Cantonese, because like some of you, most of you, I started learning Cantonese about a long time ago. I knew I was going to be going to Hong Kong, and so I wanted to learn. I didn't actually learn until I got to Hong Kong. So that was, and back then there was more learning materials. So I'm really happy and very honored to be here to share with you what I know and get you speaking some Cantonese. As Janet mentioned, I've got Cantonese Corner and CantoLingo, and I've just started doing traditional character courses, which I love doing. So that's a little bit about me. And so let's get started talking really about what is Cantonese. We're going to start right from the beginning, assuming that you know absolutely nothing about Cantonese. And so the most important thing I think you need to know is how much fun and just freewheeling it is of a language. For me, when people ask me, like, I want to learn Cantonese, what do I need to know? I really just focus on how fun it is, because when you learn an English, like if you're learning English or even German or some of the European languages, there's a lot of structure, there's a lot of grammar, there's a lot of tenses to learn. And in my opinion, when I started learning Cantonese, it was like, this is easy, because there weren't a lot of tenses to remember. Everything was straightforward. In Cantonese, they try to condense it down to the easiest possible way to get your point across. A lot of it is context, but again, there are those tones that we're going to get to in just a minute. But the other interesting thing about Cantonese that people need to know is that there's a written system, and then there's a spoken system, I guess you could say. So what you necessarily speak is not what you're going to write in the standard written Chinese, which is really just to make it easy to understand. The written Chinese is a form that everybody who speaks Chinese can understand, whether it's Mandarin speakers or different dialects. That's kind of a simplified way to look at it, that standard written Chinese can be shared among all, but the spoken Cantonese is different. And the characters that you use when you're speaking Cantonese don't necessarily match up with the standard written Chinese that all Chinese speakers would understand. So I hope that makes a bit of sense, because that to me was like, wait, really? Like, I worked in a kindergarten and the kids were reading books and learning characters that they wouldn't speak. And to me, that was so different, because in English, for the most part, you know, what you write is what you're going to say, and vice versa. You might use a formal way of writing, for example, but it's still words that you would speak. And that's different in Chinese. But that doesn't matter for us today, because we're going to be focusing strictly on speaking and not on writing. So let's see. Other things to know about Cantonese is that, for example, when I'm mentioning how easy it is, there are no pronoun changes. So I, me, mine in English, 3 different ways to say, it's basically all the same. Okay, that character isn't that spoken word is not going to really change. You might add something to it, but that's it, right? Tenses, it's kind of context. You'll add in the day, maybe tomorrow, yesterday, to get that context meaning. There are some ways to, you know, for example, make it ing. You add a different character afterwards. But for the most part, it is so much simpler to get started speaking right away. You don't have to worry about those. So let's see. Something else to know about Cantonese is that it is super old, really old. It predates Mandarin, and it dates back to, I need to read this because I can't really remember, 220 AD, around the Han Dynasty time is when Cantonese started to develop, and it's still with us today. So it's important not only historically, but in a modern sense. We know that it's spoken natively by over 84.9 million people worldwide. That's huge. 60% of Chinese speakers in the San Francisco Bay Area speak Cantonese. 48% in California alone speak Cantonese natively. So it's really important. I think I was really surprised when I came back to the States after I came back last year for kind of establishing more of a presence here in the US, coming back for family reasons and other things, hoping to get back to Hong Kong next year. But when I came back here, it's a really weird thing, having lived in Hong Kong for 30 years and coming here and having family here. When I'm here, Hong Kong doesn't seem to exist. And I've spoken about this before on my channel. And then when I'm in Hong Kong, the US doesn't seem to exist. It's just 2 completely different worlds, if you will. But when I was here, I started to realize that there is a huge community, and they're all so passionate about saving Cantonese. And that's why I thought that I should do what I can to promote it, and to, I'm not so great on social media, but do my best to kind of promote it, and more importantly, teach it. And so that's why I'm really happy to be here today. So yes, let's talk about, okay, we're skipping around this. Yes, keeping it alive is so super important to keep Cantonese alive. And I thank you all for being here and wanting to learn with us. So moving on to, now that I told you how easy it is to learn, I think most of you will know that it is a tonal language, meaning that the meaning of the words will change depending on the tone that you use. So we're going to spend a lot of time, relative to how much time we have today, working a little bit on the tones in a really fun way, giving you some useful words and phrases and practicing those different tones. But first, let's talk about how many tones. This has been the big debate. People say, how many tones are there? I tell you honestly, when I first learned in the late 80s, early 1990s, there were definitely 7 tones. There was a high falling tone that now has been kind of absorbed into just the high tone. I use the Yale system when I teach of phonetics, and it predates Yutping. So I think a lot of you who are learning Cantonese or learning Cantonese are familiar with Yutping, which is a phonetic system I'll get into in a moment. So let me get back to the tones first, okay? Nowadays, there are really 6 tones. Hey, when I was learning again, there was 7. There are 9 tones technically, if you include the it gets a little bit complicated. Even I don't really understand when you talk about the 9 different tones. So you're lucky now because there's only 6. And the 6 tones are interesting because if you take a look at the chart here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But you'll notice, and this surprised me, and I learned this quite recently, that the lowest tone is not actually tone 6. So if you'll notice, tone 1 is the highest. Tone 2 is going to be a rising tone. Tone 3 is right there in the middle, a flat 3rd tone. You've got tone 4. The 4th tone you would think is going to be next in line in terms of high going to low, but no, tone 4 is like, I just always say, going right down into the basement. And we'll get examples of these shortly, so you'll see what I mean. Tone 5 is another rising tone, but it doesn't rise as high as the 2nd tone. And tone 6 is just the low tone, a flat tone that falls somewhere in between that falling 4th tone and then your rising 5th tone. So that's, honestly, I didn't even realize that the 4th tone was lower than the 6th tone until quite recently. And so that's something to keep in mind. So let's talk for a minute first about Yale versus Yutping, because you'll notice that the words that I'm going to be writing on the screen here, they are in Yale, but I will put the Yutping tone number after them. Let's just take a look here at the first one. So up here, we've got Sam. Sam is 3, right? Sam, you'll notice that in Yale and Yutping, it's the same spelling, S-A-A-M. In Yale, they use the tone marks. So it's a straight line over the first vowel, and that denotes the number 1 tone, the high tone. Yutping writes it the same way, but they just put the number 1 there. And so if you go down to the second one, which is actually 1, which is yat, right? Yat, you'll notice it's spelled with the Y-A-T, with that high tone mark. And then in Yutping, it is J-A-T with the number 1 after it. So you'll notice that Yale uses the tone marks and Yutping does not. They rely on the numbers only. And so that J for a Y, to me, if you see my Cantonese Corner YouTube channels, you know that I'm a big fan of Yale, especially for beginner learners, because it looks more like you expect it to look. Like Y-A-T, Y has a Y sound, and yet sounds like that. So that's the one. The J-A-T takes a little bit of time to get used to, but of course, you can get used to it. And then it has the number after it. In my opinion, Yale was devised early on, like in the 50s and 60s. I believe Yale was it's Yale University. Yale University professors and academics were in China, came up with the system, and they geared it towards beginner learners that spoke English and spoke other languages other than Chinese. Yutping came along from Hong Kong University. That's the other thing. Yale is used exclusively by Chinese University in Hong Kong, and Yutping was developed by academics at Hong Kong University. Those are the 2 big universities in Hong Kong. In fact, they used to be the only universities, but nowadays, a lot of the other schools, there's a lot more choice now in terms of universities. You got City University, Polytechnic University, Baptist University, but Chinese U and Hong Kong U are the big ones. I digress. So back to this, Yutping was developed by Hong Kong University academics, and the reason for it was to be more precise. So while I believe that they achieve that with it being very precise, it is confusing. So let's go on. We've got our t. The next one here, number 7. 7 is t. Again, it's a high tone. In Yutping, it's spelled C-A-T. And so that to me loses a little bit of that t. Again, it looks like chat. In English, C-H-A-T is chat. So it falls in between there. So that's one that can kind of go either way. But if you look at the last one, it's again a high tone. It's chut, chut. That one means to go out, chut. And you'll notice the character, you'll see it in every exit sign at every Chinese restaurant. You'll see the character for this, like an exit, right, to go out. So chut is how to pronounce it. But if you look at the Yutping, to me, this means nothing. C-E-O-T with the number 1. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jim, for putting the character there in the chat. That is the character that you will see at the exit, chut and hao, chut hao, which is a little mouth at the other side. Thanks for that. So you can check the chat for the character we're talking about. But C-E-O-T is also chut, but that might not be as intuitive. So what I'm doing for our 6 lessons here with you is I'm going to use the Yale writing and include the Yutping number. And I hope that works for me, and I hope it kind of works for you. Of course, if you're used to Yutping exclusively, it'll look a little bit funny with the number in a Yale, but I'm hoping it's going to help you guys because it is a little bit more intuitive when you're starting from ground zero and starting to learn. So that's the Yutping versus Yale and how we're going to be doing the phonetic system here. So let's get started looking at how important the tones are, because the tones are important, do not get me wrong, but it's not really something to stress about because it could be in context, you will be understood, and it shouldn't stop you from learning. Like, I have to get this tone right before I can move on. Just keep learning and keep practicing. But there are moments, funny moments, you may have seen videos, people like to compare the tones and how it can really lead to a lot of misunderstanding in funny instances. So for example, over here on this side, the left side, we've got tone 5 with your tou ngo, tou ngo, hungry, tou ngo, and that means hungry. Both are low tones. The 5th tone is going to be your low rising tou, and your ngo is going to be your 6th low tone, tou ngo, right? And ngo ho tou ngo, I'm hungry. But if you mispronounce it, the tones, and you say that tou is your tou, your 5th tone, low rising tou, and you use the 1st tone, ngo, tou ngo, that means diarrhea. So that's not something you want to mix up. And sometimes I think, like, when they first came up with the tones, were they just trying to be funny, like, and put something so closely related in a different tone? So you've got tou ngo, hungry, and tou ngo, which is diarrhea. So you don't want to make that mistake. Another mistake could be between computer and a crazy person. So a computer, again, we're switching it around. We've got tone 6 first, your tin, and then tin no. Tin no. Tin no is a computer. And tin no, but if you mispronounce it for the 1st tone, tin no is going to be a crazy person. So those are mistakes that you want to kind of be aware of. But for the most part, it shouldn't put you off learning, because a lot of times, if you're misunderstood, then you just make the correction and move on. I remember, I'll go off on a tangent a little bit and tell you a story when I was first learning in Hong Kong, and they have a lot of takeaway shops. And I wanted to order just white rice, and the white rice is sitting there in front of where I'm talking to the cashier, and it's there in a big tub, and I'm pointing to it and I'm saying, and you fan, ba fan, and I kept saying fan like in a higher tone, and they just would not understand me. They were just like, I think they were just having a bit of fun, like fan, I don't know what you're talking about, because the tone actually is the 6th tone fan. So all you ba fan, fan instead of fan. So that was, you learn pretty quickly when you are practicing and people are there to point out where you're going wrong and correcting you. So, okay, let's do some practice. And I know that there is a lot of us here, and so you can just practice and follow along and say it out loud, even though we won't be able to hear you. But our first one, I thought,
Or if we have any volunteers, then we might be able to let people try it as well.
absolutely, that would be, yeah, if you want to raise your hand and give it a go, that would be so much fun. So when I usually teach people the tones, I tell them to set the parameters, go from high to low. And two really good words are our words for thank you. There's two different words to say thank you in Cantonese. And the first one we're going to look at is going high to low. And it is saying thank you when you're given a gift or someone pays you a compliment. So these are your high tone, do, do. It's the first tone, the high tone, do, and then ze, do, ze, do, ze. So if you can set the high being high and the low being low, then you know where you are, kind of like a musical scale, right? You've got your high and low tone set, do, ze. Okay, do, ze. So that's a really good one. Any volunteers want to give that one a go? Okay, if not, just jump in.
多謝
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 I love it. These are all great. Yep, your thoughts. Very nice. I can't see anybody, but these all sound wonderful. Your thoughts. And that again is thank you for a gift or a compliment. Oh, can we see the tone chart one more time? So here you'll see we're going from tone 1, do, down to ze, do, ze. Yep, the most important thing is you can go as high as you want because there's nothing higher than the first tone. So do, ze is even, that's okay too. And when I am first working with people, it's kind of very exaggerated. You can feel free to be really exaggerated and go as high as you want. Do, ze, and then bring it in. Okay, so do, ze is going to be your thank you for a gift or a compliment. The next one we have is going to again be, we'll get to the other thank you in a minute, but we're going to still stick with the high to low. If you want to say one day, it is the same. Oh yeah, I didn't mention this, I should mention this. The H in the second one, the yet, is H in the Yale system denotes a low tone. So you won't see it if you're talking about the third tone, second tone, first tone. But when you get to a low tone, you're going to have an H. It's silent. It just telling you it's low. So this one again, we're going yet for our one, yet, 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 yet. And that means one day. Anybody want to give that a try?
Yet, yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Yes, it's the same kind of yet, right? Yet. I have one day, right? Yet. That's awesome. So there we go again, high to low. The next one we've got here is again, high to low. Zi is your high tone. Do, zi do is I don't know. Zi do. Actually, it's just don't know. We don't have the I in there, but oh, and again, I'm sorry. It's not I don't know. This is, oh, sorry, that's my mistake. This one is just saying I know. So it's not, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. It should be I know, not I don't know. So ignore the English. There's only two characters there. And the first one is zi, second one is do, zi do, and it means no. Okay. There's no I there either. So I think sorry. Zi do is going to be your no. So did anybody want to give that a try? Again, the high tone. Zi do.
知道
Perfect.
知道
Yay.
知道
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 Dido.
Those are great. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
that's wonderful.
Yep. 知道. So that again is I know, or no, just simply no. And that's another one, high to low. So now we're going to switch a little bit and go low to high. So this one is our second way to say thank you. And it's really thank you for a service. So someone holds the door open for you. You're going to say low tone, high tone, guy, guy. So you're going this time really low. Fourth tone again is like just right to the basement. And then way up high for the guy, guy. Want to try that one?
唔該
該
唔該
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 該
唔該
唔該
Yes, this is awesome. Just really far down low and really high up high. So guy, and that again is thank you for somebody doing something for you.
And then sometimes for Hong Kong people, we also like to add a lot of N sound to it. So sometimes we would say 唔該晒, 唔該晒. It still means thank you for the service.
Oh, doesn't guy mean please as well? There are a lot of different instances. Thank you, Justin, where you can use guy to mean please. It can also actually even mean excuse me. So for example, if you're going into a shop, you want to get someone's attention, you're in the restaurant, you want to get their attention, guy, like that, just as a way to say, excuse me, please, like please, yeah, I guess like please do something for me, guy. Absolutely, it's used a lot in a lot of different ways, and you'll hear it in those ways as well.
So just a quick time check, it's 7. We have 30 minutes for our class. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Okay, sounds good. Again, we're going to be, here's our I don't know. I think I probably copied the slide. So this is our I don't know. And we're going to introduce low to high with your zi. It's the same zi as no as before. We had our zi though. This one is zi, I don't know. Want to give that a try?
唔知
唔知
知
唔知
唔知道
Perfect. And I caught a zi though, and that's correct as well. Before we had the zi though, meaning no, and I kept it to 2 characters, so I didn't add the do, zi though, but that's also absolutely correct. Let's see. Sorry, I'm looking at the comments here. I will let Janet and Wendy, if there's a comment that we need to address or answer, then I'll do that for sure. But see, you can just simply say I don't know in that way, or you could say see though. That's also okay too. Okay.
And I think we just have a quick question on the chat that asks, the other thank you was for gift or compliment. Maybe we can say one more time. I think is 多謝. It's usually, I think, is for a gift. 唔該 is for a service.
Yes.
All right.
And m'gai is also the one is mentioned that you hear it a lot more as in like excuse me or please or a lot of different ways. But that's the difference. 多謝 for a gift or a compliment, and m'gai for something somebody helps you out with. Okay. So this one here is going to be, again, low to high. We're going down low for the up high for sec, sec, meaning I put the I there, but it's really, if I'm speaking and I say sec, I'm talking about me, but I don't understand. I don't know how to do something. Sec.
Sick.
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 These are all perfect. This is great. They sounded really, really good. Sick.
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 Now, and remember the sick, okay, sick, remember that you're doing a high tone sick, because later we're going to see a different one. But first, let's go to something that you hear every morning in Hong Kong, and I'm sure in Chinese communities everywhere, and that is our good morning. And everybody, this is a really useful one to learn, because you can say it right away tomorrow morning, and that is we're going to get into a rising tone now with a zhou. And typically I do this little movement with my hand, if you can see it. Zhou, and then down low for the sun, zhou sun. So you got to remember to get the zhou, right? You can zhou. It has that flick going up. Perfect. I could hear that. Anybody else want to try?
Sun.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. The zhou san. And I think it's always it's a happy zhou, always reminds me of something very happy, like a good morning. Zhou san. So that's our good morning. Now, before we had the sec, meaning I don't know or understand. Now we've got the low tone for sec, jia. So this is going to be your sixth tone. It's got the H there in Yale for low tone, and it means on its own, it means to eat. And this jaw, the second tone again, is going to be that rising going up. Yes, that sounded beautiful. Sek jaw, I've eaten, or just have eaten. 8.
And a lot of times, people in Hong Kong, again, we would add the final sound to it as well, that it will sound like sek jaw la, sek jaw la.
Do you guys want to give that a go? Either the sek jaw or sek jaw la.
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 I don't know about you guys, but you sound so fun. So I'm hoping that you guys are having fun with this, because it is fun, isn't it? To kind of play with the tones and being that happy rising tone, and the sek jaw la with the endings there make it. That's something else that makes Cantonese so much fun, is the ending particles, I guess they could be called, the endings to words like the la and the ah and the gama, all of those endings, which are really so much fun to use. And when you're first learning, they're kind of intimidating a little bit, because they really make it sound native. So I love it, Janet, that we're adding those in right now, and that you guys get a chance to practice those as well. So that's our sek jaw or sek jaw la. Next one, we're going to add in the meal, which is literally rice. But when you say sek jaw, that's the one we had, sek jaw, we're adding our fan, sek jaw fan. You guys want to give that a go?
Sek jaw fan.
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 Yes, sounds great. Sek jaw fan. I have eaten, I ate, usually a meal, but literally the word fan, the character that is the cooked rice, character meaning cooked rice. So sek jaw fan. Yes, that sounded beautiful. Okay, moving on, we have, now we're going to add to that. Okay, so we had our sek jaw fan, and now we're going to add, this is a question, and it's also used as a greeting around lunchtime. in the afternoon, around the time that you usually would be eating, people will use this as a greeting. So for example, when I was working in Hong Kong and I would go into my building, or even the caretakers in the building where I live, they would say this to me every day. 食咗飯未啊? 食咗飯未啊? So you can tell there's a lot of number six tones in this. It's our low tone. It's the sixth.
食咗飯未啊？
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 食咗飯未啊？食咗飯未啊？
食咗飯未啊？飯未啊？
Those sound, I was just going to say, yes, this group learns fast. I agree. You guys sound amazing. And yeah, 食咗飯未啊? And that's something that you hear around lunchtime a lot. So even though in English, have you eaten, we really wouldn't be asking people that as a form of greeting. They do use it as a form of greeting, and you hear it every single day. So it's a very good one to learn. So I think our next one.
So Sue was just showing everybody about the tone exercise. And then the next one that I think she's moving on to would be useful phrases. So I'm going to move on to the next slide for you.
Okay. Yes. Well, those were some I kind of mixed them up a little bit. We're going to, combine some of the things we've learned and expand them in kind of a little bit of a dialogue. So if you were saying, good morning, how have you been? Right? You'd be saying our 早晨, 你點啊? 早晨. Now this 你 is you. And this one is the fifth tone. So it is a rising tone. It's our low rising. So we've got our second tone, 早晨. 你點啊? 你點啊? Like that. And your eyes, just like your question. I can see some questions coming in about what the reply would be. And I think we're going to get to that just in a little while. And if not, we'll address it at the end for sure. But our 早晨, 早晨, 你點啊? Can we try that one?
早晨，你點啊？
早晨你點啊？
你點啊？
早晨，你點啊？早晨，你點啊？
早晨，你點啊？
早晨，你點啊？
點啊？
Perfect. That sounded really good. And that's going to be our, if you run into somebody on the street, 早晨，你點啊? Exactly. And a reply could be, again, you're going to be saying good morning back. And then you could be saying, I'm doing great, right? I'm doing okay. I'm doing good. So you're 早晨，幾好啊? Now you're 幾好. Both of those are your rising tones. So we've got 幾好啊, 幾好啊, like that. And they kind of all run together. 幾好啊, the 好啊. You can tell it just kind of runs together. So you want to give that a try? Our 早晨，幾好啊?
早晨，
早晨，
早晨幾好啊？
早晨幾好啊？
早晨，幾好啊？
Exactly. And that's what you would say if you ran into somebody on the street and you're like, yeah, 幾好啊? 早晨.
So Sue, why don't we try this? If I say, Sue, 早晨，你點啊? How would you respond?
Janet, 早晨，幾好啊？你呢? And I added something a little bit there, asking back like, and you, which would be our 你呢? Or 你呢? And that's kind of asking you using the ne particle. Don't know if we had that one written on the slides. I kind of threw that one in there. But that's to ask back like how you're doing. Yeah. So, okay, we've got another useful phrase. Now, there is some debate about this because when I was learning and other people that teach Cantonese and local in Hong Kong especially, there's kind of like, well, not many people say this. They'll be saying, 你點啊 is much more casual and it's much more, you could say maybe even, well, just less formal, right? But the standard that people tend to learn when they say, how are you, is nei hou ma, the low rising nei, and then hou, and then ma. Ma is going to be your question particle. So literally this is saying you, good, question. And it translates into how are you. This one is still, I believe, used if you're really, Janet, remember we were chatting about this, saying how this is something that you might use if you are in a more kind of formal situation, and you wouldn't be going up to like your boss's wife if it's the first time you're being introduced and say like, what, lady ma? I mean, that would be kind of very casual. And even you can tell my delivery was a little bit more casual. You might be saying something like, oh, you know, lei hou ma, and more of a little formal kind of greeting. Would you agree with that, Janet?
Yes, I would. I think it's the first time that I met you, I would be saying that nei hou ma instead of saying wei nei di ma. So I'll say nei hou ma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would anybody like to try? Nei hou ma.
Ni hou ma.
Ni hou ma.
Ni hou ma.
Ni hou ma.
And then I think in Hong Kong, maybe if people ask nei hou ma, a very casual way to reply probably will be okay la.
Mm-hmm. Okay la, the gay hoa. Yeah. Ho. Mm-hmm. Just repeating that ho. At least I would, that's, yeah, ho, gay ho. Yeah. So here's another one that can be used in getting somebody's attention, saying hello. This one is really used between, I believe, close friends. I wouldn't say this to my boss or my boss's wife, but is our, well, first of all, I should separate those out. We've got the hey, and we also have hey, hello, and we have it used when you're talking on the telephone and answering on the phone. So the first one is going to be more of like a why, just a why, and it's really just your third tone, just like why, hey, more of like a hey, hello, like why, lady ma, why, like that kind of. You'll hear that a lot. If you're maybe having a conversation, there's three of you at a dinner table and you're having a conversation and they're deep in conversation, you want to say why, like kind of an interruptive kind of word, like why, and then you want to say something. So that's one way to do it. Another way is on the telephone. When you answer it, you use more of the second tone, which is more like why, why, and that's literally the way to say hello on the telephone. If you're not going to use English and say hello, it would be wai, and that's used, that's the way to say hello when you're talking on the phone. So it's used a lot, the wai and wai. Okay, so we'll move on because I know we want to make time for questions and answers at the end. So here again is our useful phrase that we went over before, which is our食咗飯未啊? So we did that one before, but that's again during lunchtime when you are asked a greeting, kind of like, have you eaten yet, as a form of greeting. Perfect. Mm-hmm. And then now let's introduce our answer to that. So 食咗飯未啊? And then here's our answer. So you could say, for example, I have, thank you. Like, how about you, right? 食咗啦唔該. Okay, and that's just saying again, like, thank you for asking, right? 食咗啦唔該，你呢? Right? And that's kind of what I said before with you, Janet, when we were chatting. So do you want to give that a try? Like, for example, if I said, oh, hello, 食咗飯未啊? What are you going to say in return?
食咗啦，唔該，你呢?
Perfect.
咗啦，唔該，你呢？食咗啦，唔該，你呢？
食咗啦，唔該，你呢?
Perfect. That's exactly.
唔該，你呢?
食咗啦，唔該，你呢? I don't know.
That all sounded perfect. 食咗啦唔該，你呢? Right? And that ne is a question particle at the end, which just says right? How about you, right? And you, right? And you, Layla. Okay.
So actually, there's a quick question. So if I haven't eaten, then what would I say?
Oh, may say, and may, usually just may, and may is kind of like a yet or a still. Would you agree with that, Janet? I usually typically just say, oh, may
May say
may say and
or
your
I
may.
can also say 一陣食. In a little bit, I'll eat. 一陣食. May say 一陣食.
My mother-in-law says may sick.
May say, yeah.
Do you know what's so funny is that I typically, regardless of whether I have or not, I find it sometimes just easier and it doesn't lead to more conversation if I'm in a hurry, just to say, "食咗啦，唔該," because then if I say like, oh, may, then they might ask me more questions and get more in-depth conversation like, oh, like so late, you haven't eaten yet. And what are you going to eat? And, you know, you need to eat more. And so sometimes the easy answer is just like, "食咗啦，唔該," and then yeah. But all of those other ones are absolutely like may, or may say fine, may are also good too. So, okay, I guess our last one before questions is saying, I gotta go, see you later, right? And this one will be, again, you're gonna go up with the 走, right? 走先啦, right? 走先啦. And that's gonna be your, I gotta go. It's literally go first, right? 走先, I'm gonna leave first, I gotta go. 走先啦. And then our, well, why don't we try that one first? Do you guys want to have a go with the 走先啦?
走先啦，係司機。
走先啦，下次見啦。
走先啦。
Perfect.
走先啦，
Okay.
下次見啊。
Yes. The hachi, you'll notice those are staying in low tone territory. So it's hachi gina. It's all staying mid tone and below hachi gina. So it's kind of easier to say. The 走先啦, the scene is going to go high, 走先啦, and then we're down low. So it's kind of fun to do the 走先啦, and then down hachi gina, like that. And of course, we've got bye-bye, which is bye-bye in English. So bye-bye, you've got the high tone number 1, bye-bye, and then the third tone. And again, our hachi, which we had before, hachi gong la. Gong is going to be talk or speak. And next time is hachi gong la. Bye-bye, hachi gong la.
Bye-bye, hachi gong la.
Bye-bye, 下次講啦。
拜拜，下次講啦。
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 拜拜，下次再講啦。
Oh, I like it. Yes, those are all very good. I heard an extra. Awesome. That sounded great.
Bye-bye, 下次講啦.
That sounded really good. So those are just some useful phrases that we have. And now I guess, Janet, do we have time for questions? And
yes, I think in the chat we have one question that I'm going to go back first. It asks about the 你呢, the N and the L. 定係你呢 or 你呢?
Yes. Well, if you've seen my Cantonese Corner YouTube channel, I do have a video on this, on the pronunciation of that N and L. So N often, almost exclusively for some words, is now pronounced with an L sound. So that nei, you, the fifth tone, that low rising nei, is actually now more often than not pronounced as lei, instead of nei. So you can hear a difference there between N and L. So that they do call it like a lazy pronunciation, and it occurs in different words as well. The GW for like a guo sound, guo as in guo, guo, has now kind of been reduced down to ga, and it kind of lost that W sound. I still use the N when I write it because that is the proper pronunciation is nei, for example, instead of lei. But yeah, you'll hear that a lot. Lei, lei homa instead of nei homa. So it's really up to you. I mean, both of them in Hong Kong, I mean, I should probably pronounce the N sound more as in nei, but you fall into the habit of just saying lei. But I just can't bring myself to change it and write the L. So that's why you still see the N, although a lot of people pronounce it as L.
And Sue, I think there's also one question coming in asking, what's the difference between 走啦 and 走先啦? Is there a difference?
I think there is a little bit of a difference. 走啦,走先啦. For example, if you are all eating dinner in a restaurant and you have to leave first, that character, that word seen is really first. So I'm going to take off first. I'm going to leave first. But of course, in a general sense, if you're like 走啦, and you physically leave first, then that also is the same understanding. They're understanding that you're going first. 走啦. But you could also, for example, you're all eating dinner together in a group, and somebody might say like, oh, 走啦, meaning let's all go, right? Let's all go. So if you really say 我走先 or 你走先 or something like that, it really has that meaning of first. Like I'm going to go first and you guys stay here. But if you're just like, 走啦, that it could be, the meaning could be like, well, let's all go. Would you agree with that, Janet?
I think so. If I say 我走先啦, that means I'm going to go in first. Or if I just say 走啦, then maybe it's everybody's going together. Maybe.
Yeah. That's exactly. So that's kind of the difference between that. So this is
so that sort of brings us a bit to, I guess, an end of our lesson 1 with some of the useful phrases and some of the tone practices that we did. As you can see, 60 minutes is actually really short when in Cantonese. I'm sure that you didn't realize 60 minutes had passed. But I did post it another lesson 4, 5, 6 on our website. I think you will be seeing it a little bit, maybe tomorrow, but I think all of you guys that you have registered for class 1 to 3, you're already automatically registered for these lesson 4, 5, and 6 already. And with the help of some of our librarians here, we have Wendy, we have Jenny, we have put together a lot of the Cantonese learning resources for you as well. And as you see in here, we have Sue's Cantonese Corner, that you will find if you follow this tiny URL to Let's Talk Cantonese. You will find her playlist on her YouTube. And also she has her website, which is the CantoLingo website, where she actually teaches Chinese character as well. And she also has her Instagram, which is Cantonese Corner, which you will see a lot of things that she has posted. And in the library, we also put together a resource list for you where you will see a lot of books that we put together, and we have pronunciator that you can use that you can practice Cantonese. You have books in here that you can check out. You can place a hold or you can use it online. And we also put together a movie list, which is in Cantonese for you. And guess what? We also listed a whole lot of Cantonese songs for you as well. If you were to just click on them, and then you will be able to find all these different Cantonese songs channels that we put together. And welcome to go and browse and listen to it. The more you listen to it, the more the practice, it's better. Is that right, Sue?
Oh, absolutely. Before I went to Hong Kong and formally learned Cantonese, I spent so much time. My biggest tip to people is to listen, like actively listen to the sounds. And yeah. And the music is wonderful. Yeah.
I guess we can open up a little bit in here, and then maybe Sue can take some questions from you guys. And then if you have a question that you want to ask, you can raise your hand, and then we will admit you in. Okay.
And also, can I just mention one thing? I'm still moving CantoLingo to a new platform where I have the traditional character courses. So if anyone's interested in that, you might not find it right away. And I apologize. I'm gonna have to, I'm still working on moving all of that over, but just have been so busy with the classes themselves. So I might want, if it's possible to share my email, that would be really good too. I can put my email in the chat maybe. And that way or next time when we meet next Wednesday, I should have everything sorted by then.
Any question that we have from you guys for Sue? Let me go to the chat a little bit to look. Someone say, I love Leslie. Me too. Sue too.
Yeah, actually, Leslie, the song Monica was the first song. This goes way back, but if you know Leslie, Monica, his song, there's a little bit of English in the song. And I remember it was the first song my girlfriends back at university in the US would play that song all the time. And I got to know that song and I could actually like sing some of the song before I even knew how to speak Cantonese. So Leslie's a very
popular singer. So Sue, there's one question that's coming that says, are there any words or phrases that people use in Guangzhou, Guangxi that Hong Kong people don't use? I actually don't know. I'm sure there might be some differences, I would imagine.
I know that, well, from what I know, my husband, his family is from Guangzhou, from Guangzhou, and I know some of the differences. I'm not sure if they still exist, but for example, like going to work, like fan gong, they don't use that because they'd say like I don't know, like ban. Yeah, they use a little bit different. I'm not sure if it's still the case. It's been a while since I've been there, but differences like that, I think.
Yeah, there's some regional differences. So instead of saying fan gong, then maybe they may say fan. And then we also have one question that asks you, do you like dan tat?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I like dan tat, but probably I like the bolo yao even more, and the sai to si, and the yeah.
You guys will have to stay until probably towards more end of this sort of an introductory series where Sue will introduce a lot of the dim sum terms for you.
For sure. Yeah, who doesn't like dan tat? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Macau is also another place that uses Cantonese as well. You're right, Justin. Yeah.
Right, I miss saying that. Yeah, that in Guangdong province, places in Guangxi, parts of Malaysia, Macau, of course, Hong Kong, and around the world.
Yep. Okay, all right. So I guess that kind of wraps up for tonight. And the YouTube, we are gonna post this video on our Oakland Public Library YouTube channel. And you can go back and review some of the words and the tones and all the phrases that you have used that tonight and that Sue have taught us tonight. And then next Wednesday, the same time, we will do this again, and then Sue will introduce more Cantonese phrases to us. So we will see you all again next Wednesday. And thank you for joining. 我哋可以大家一齊講，多謝晒阿 Sue， 多謝晒，
多謝晒，Sue。
Alright， 如果未食飯，食飯啦。If you haven't eaten, go eat now.
Thank you.
拜拜。
好開心，好啦，拜拜，下次
再見，
再見，拜拜。
拜拜。